It was Christmas Eve, 1945. While families across America were unwrapping gifts and drinking hot cocoa by the fire, one family in Fayetteville, West Virginia, was about to experience a tragedy that would haunt them forever. This is the story of the Sodder children, a mystery so perplexing, so emotionally charged, it still raises questions nearly 80 years later. 5 children vanished in a house fire and were never seen again. So what really happened that night? Was it just a tragic accident or something far more sinister? A perfect American family? Or so it seemed. George and Jennie Sodder were proud Italian immigrants raising 10 children in a quiet home in West Virginia. George owned a successful trucking company, and by all accounts, the family lived comfortably. But George had enemies. He was vocal about his opposition to Benito Mussolini, and many local Italian Americans didn't take kindly to that. He'd received threats, cryptic messages, and even a visit from a stranger who warned, "Your house is going to go up in smoke, and your children will be destroyed." George brushed it off. But was this warning a prophecy? The night everything changed. On Christmas Eve, the family celebrated with gifts, laughter, and a late night. 5 of the Sodder children, Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, 5, stayed up playing with their new toys. Around 10 p.m., Jennie Sodder tucked the younger kids into bed. Then just after 1 a.m., Jenny was startled by a loud bang on the roof, followed by a rolling sound. Minutes later, the house was engulfed in flames. George, Jenny, and 4 of the children made it out. The other 5 were never seen again. The fire that shouldn't have burned that fast. The Sodder home was reduced to ash in 45 minutes, an unusually fast burn, even for a wooden structure. George smashed windows and tried to re-enter, but the staircase was already gone. He climbed the walls in desperation, but couldn't reach the children's rooms. Even stranger, his ladder was missing, and his truck wouldn't start, even though it had worked the day before. It was as if something or someone wanted to keep him out. No remains found. Here's where it gets weird. Despite extensive searches, no bones, teeth, or physical remains of the 5 missing children were ever found in the rubble. Experts later claimed that a house fire could not burn hot enough to completely cremate human remains, especially not in such a short time. But local authorities ruled it an accident. No questions asked. The fire chief even buried the ashes before investigators could examine them. Why the rush? Strange sightings and clues. Soon after the fire, reports began flooding in. One woman said she saw the children looking out of a passing car's window during the fire. A waitress in Charleston said she served breakfast to 5 children, matching their descriptions the next morning. A letter arrived years later from Kentucky, claiming Martha was alive. It included a photo of a young woman and a cryptic message. "I love Brother Frankie, lil boys," a 90132 or 35 inches. The Sodders hired private detectives, and even a billboard was erected on Route 16, pleading, "What was the fate of our children?" A theory of kidnapping. George Sodder was convinced the mafia had taken his children in retaliation for his anti-Mussolini stance. He believed they were either raised under new identities or perhaps sold into adoption rings. The idea may sound far-fetched, but the number of suspicious events surrounding the fire, the cut phone lines, the missing ladder, the disconnected trucks, the vanishing remains, all suggest this was no ordinary blaze. Was it a cover-up? And if so, why? Local corruption? The Sodders were vocal and relentless in their search, yet local authorities offered little help. One private investigator they hired mysteriously vanished, and another turned out to be a con artist. The fire chief even claimed he found a heart in the ashes, but later admitted it was just beef liver. Why would someone fake remains? The question remains, were the police just incompetent, or were they actively suppressing the truth? The billboard that became a landmark. For over 40 years, a massive billboard stood outside the Sodder home, displaying the children's faces and reading, "The official report stated that the children died in the fire." Yet no bones were found. The billboard attracted tourists, psychics, journalists, and conspiracy theorists. It became a haunting landmark of grief and defiance. The Sodders refused to give up hope, Until the day they died, George and Jennie believed their children were still alive. FBI involvement and withdrawal. Initially, the FBI took interest, but once the fire was labeled accidental, federal hands were tied. J. Edgar Hoover himself said he sympathized, but the FBI had no jurisdiction unless there was proof of kidnapping. But what qualifies as proof when so much evidence was destroyed or dismissed? The Sodders' pleas fell on deaf ears. The case remained local and eventually cold. Modern theories in DNA testing. In recent years, new investigators have tried to revive the case using modern forensic tools, including DNA testing on the mysterious photo that was mailed to the family. So far, no matches have been found, but that hasn't stopped online sleuths from diving into genealogy, immigration records, and even hypnotic regression therapy with alleged witnesses. Some believe the children were raised in secrecy, afraid to come forward. Others suspect they were long gone before the fire even began. What do you think? A family torn, but not broken. The tragedy devastated the Sodder family. George spent the rest of his life chasing leads. Jennie wore black every day until her death, mourning her lost children. Their surviving siblings, now adults, continued the investigation for decades. But as time passed and witnesses died, the trail grew colder. Still, the question remains: if the children didn't die in the fire, where did they go? Could this happen today? Imagine this story happening now, in the era of security cameras, cell phones, and global DNA databases. Would it still end in silence, or would it finally crack under the weight of modern truth-seeking? It's a chilling reminder that even in a small town, with good neighbors and a warm home, the darkest mysteries can strike without warning. Mysterious phone call in the night. Not long after the fire, around 8 p.m. one evening, the Sodder household received a strange phone call. A woman's voice on the other end asked for someone unfamiliar, then let out a chilling laugh before hanging up. The call was traced, but the woman was never identified. Was it a simple wrong number or a taunt from someone who knew the truth? This bizarre call added fuel to the family's suspicions. It was just one of many eerie coincidences that occurred after the fire. Why would someone prank a grieving family unless they were hiding something? To this day, that phone call remains one of the most unsettling parts of the mystery. The basement theory. Some researchers have proposed that the children never had a chance to escape because they may have fallen into the burning house's basement. However, this theory has one major flaw. The basement was later excavated and no bones or evidence were found. The Sodders themselves dismissed the basement theory quickly. They believed it was just another excuse to write off the investigation. After all, if the basement contained anything, wouldn't investigators have found at least a trace? The complete absence of physical remains continues to cast doubt on the fire's official cause. Was the fire set intentionally? Multiple pieces of evidence suggest the fire may have been arson. For starters, the phone lines were deliberately cut, not burned. That means someone was outside the house before the fire began, severing communications. Add that to the disabled trucks, missing ladder, and blocked exits. It feels less like a coincidence and more like a coordinated act. Witnesses even reported seeing a man throw something onto the roof, possibly the thud Jennie heard before the fire. Later, a green object resembling a grenade or incendiary device was found in the yard. If the fire was a cover-up for a kidnapping, then this was a carefully planned operation. Were the children taken overseas? One of the more complex theories is that the children were kidnapped and taken abroad, possibly to Italy. George Sodder's outspoken criticism of Mussolini may have made him a target, and some believe his children were taken by sympathizers and either smuggled across the border or shipped overseas. This theory gained traction when a woman from Italy claimed to have seen Louis Sodder in a convent there. However, when investigators pursued the lead, the trail quickly went cold. Still, the idea of an international kidnapping operation, though wild, fits the level of sophistication seen in the events of that night. Conclusion: a fire that still burns. The disappearance of the Sodder children is more than a tragedy. It's a story of unanswered questions, systemic failure, and a family that refused to give up. Whether it was a kidnapping, an act of revenge, or something more sinister, one thing is clear: the truth didn't die in that fire. It's still out there, smoldering beneath the ashes, waiting to be uncovered. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.